Hi guys, welcome to Winter Park in Orlando. Today, I'll be taking you along with me to the Scenic Boat tour right here in sunny Orlando. So this is the boat we'll be jumping in a few minutes to get on that tour. It's a beautiful sunny hot day in Orlando, perfect weather for the occasion. So it's currently 9:45 here in Orlando and the boat tour starts at 10 a.m. So it's every hour on the hour. So these are my family over there. I'll be traveling with on the boat tour. We're just waiting. I believe they're waiting for a few more people, to fill out that boat, and then we'll be off. Can't wait. So we're heading onto the boat.
Actually, Nika requested separate boats, and I don't know what that was all.
Guys, we're on the boat. We're
Nika, where are y'all
about
from? Oh,
to
yeah, told me. They're
start.
from Hollywood, Florida. We got North Carolina here, and I'm guessing this is, where y'all from? Yorkshire. Hey, welcome. Glad to have you.
And we're from London.
You're from London?
Yeah,
Oh,
we're
okay.
visiting.
All right. Good. You know, Harry and Meghan were here, sat right there.
Really? Oh my God.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Let's say goodbye to Howard and Ron.
Bye.
And welcome to the Scenic Winter Park Boat Tour. My name's Don. I'll be your guide today. And I'm glad you chose us. Who's been on the tour before? Anybody? No?
No.
Wow. Wonderful. I love it when I've got all brand new guests. Well, I'm going to give you this tour. It's going to take about 50 minutes. We're going to visit 3 different lakes, 2 canals. I'll give you some wonderful history about Winter Park and how Winter Park developed into the lovely little town that it is today. Now we're on Lake Osceola. This is the smallest of the 3 lakes that we'll visit. You picked a great time to go. It gets hotter and hotter during the day, and the breeze is perfect right now. So. And my boat has air conditioning too.
Wow.
I'll turn it on in just a minute. Hold on, glasses in your hats. Welcome to the tour.
Ooh.
Hold that air conditioning. Now we're on Lake Osceola, the smallest of the 3 lakes. It's about 150 acres. All of our lakes are very shallow. They're about 15 feet deep on the average. Now today we'll be going through a couple canals, and they're beautiful, they're picturesque, and they're nice and shady. But they aren't natural. They were created by our first real settler. His name was David Mizell. Winter Park was established in 1881. In 1860, a gentleman from Virginia arrived. His name was David Mizell. He bought 6 acres where we're headed over on the next lake, and he set up a sawmill, and he started harvesting the wood from the lake's edge. Pine, oak, and cypress were the types of wood that he was after. Well, he was transporting the wood over to the sawmill, and it was difficult to do, so he came up with the idea of connecting the lakes through the canals. So the big wood started being floated through the canals over to the sawmill. So believe it or not, from 1860 to 1890, Winter Park was a logging town. The railroad came through in 1890, and Winter Park quickly flourished. But the city of Winter Park has maintained the canals ever since. Now take a good look at the next home on your right. That's got history. It was built in 1885. And it was built on this lake, but it wasn't built there. It was built on the other side of the lake in 1885, but in 2010, it was moved from there to there. But how they moved it is really the story. They cut the home in 2. They rolled it down the hill, and they floated that house across the lake to where it sits now. And they did it quickly, surprisingly quick. 45 minutes for the first piece, 15 minutes for the second, and a year to reconnect it. The name of that home is called the Capen House, and I'm going to spell it C-A-P-E-N. And at the end of the tour, I'll show you where it was originally built as well. This is the Fern Canal. 1/8 of a mile long, connecting Lake Osceola to Lake Virginia, created by Mr. Mizell in 1860 in order to move the wood from one lake to the other.
I'm really enjoying this tour. I'm discovering so many new things.
The canals are about 5 feet deep on the average, and the city of Winter Park maintains them now. But they are 2-way canals. Jet skiers, paddle boards, kayaks. On the weekends, we see quite a bit of traffic. Now we're coming to the Osceola Bridge, and you're going to have to watch your head, everybody. It's very low. So please duck. You can see our water level's a little bit low. It can get even tighter. Now, we had Hurricane Ian come through last year, and we were closed for a month because of high water. The water was over the top of this shelf right there, and it was at that level for 30 days. And a lot of the homes were flooded. We're gonna make our way out onto Lake Virginia, my favorite lake, 250 acres. Beautiful. It's where the sawmill was originally located. But it's now the home of Rollins College, established in 1885. So on a timeline, Winter Park was 1881, Rollins was 1885, the railroad 1889. We're going to look to the left here as we go down this side of the lake. Mr. Mizell, excuse me, was from Virginia, and when he arrived here in 1858, he named this Lake Virginia after his home state of Virginia. But if you look to your left, you're going to see an opening. You'll see another lake over there on the other side. He named that one after himself. That's Lake Mizell. So Lake Mizell's on that side. Lake Virginia's on this side. The community's called Windsong, and the real estate values of these homes on your left are somewhere between $12 and $20 million.
Wow.
The first one you see, the white one, was originally built in 1928, and it started out as the Men's Club of Winter Park. In 1956, that became Rollins Music School, also known as Martin Hall. And in 1976, it was sold, and that's been a private home ever since 1976. And here's a little secret about that house. Nobody's grass is that green. That's all artificial turf over there.
Wow.
All right, time for some air conditioning.
Woo!
Hold on.
Oh my God!
But Mr. Morse was from Chicago, and by 1900, he was Winter Park's most prominent resident. In fact, he was president of what's called the Winter Park Land Association. In 1921, they bought the property on your left. But I don't mean just that house. When I say on your left, I mean from the bridge that I showed you to the very end. 200 acres, they paid $4 an acre.
Whoa.
$4, 1921. The first home built is the last home on your left. That's the home of Dr. Genius and his wife Elizabeth Morse Genius, daughter of Charles Morse.
Cut away. Cut away.
What a beautiful campus. 80 acres, and it runs the entire shoreline from where I'm pointing at on the left all the way back down to the canal that we just came through. Now their first year was 1885, and that first year they had 65 students. And the tuition was a modest $125 a year.
Wow.
Not anymore. New numbers are 2,800 undergrad, 1,000 graduate students, and room, board, and tuition now at Rollins stands at $72,000 per student. 9 students to every 1 teacher. Liberal arts, 32 different majors are offered. Library to your left. Olympic-sized swimming pool in front of us, and behind the pool is the cafeteria. Now it might cost that amount to enroll, but it doesn't cost that to visit. Well, on your left, that's one of 2 boathouses for the Rollins students. It's called the Alfond Boathouse. There's also a beautiful hotel on campus that has the same name, the Alfond Inn. Now that's for their skiing team and their sailing effort. They have a second boathouse over on Lake Maitland for the rowing team. Now just behind this boathouse, that's my favorite museum in Winter Park. That's the Rollins Museum of Fine Art with the tile roof. What makes that museum different than the others is every 90 days different exhibitions go through that location. So if you're frequent to Winter Park, you can see something unique and different every 90 days at the Rollins Museum of Fine Art. Now on your left-hand side, I've been talking about the sawmill. That's where it was originally located in 1860. Today it's Winter Park's public beach. The home on your left with the Spanish Mediterranean tile. That home is owned by the college, occupied by the president of Rollins. That's part of his compensation. Everything to the right is privately owned condominiums. Everything to the left is owned by Rollins College. Usually I get a question or two about the wildlife, and usually the question is, are there alligators?
Yeah.
Yes, there are. Not many, and not often seen, but definitely still some. I work 2 days a week. I fish at least 3 or 4 days a week on these lakes. I talk to the wildlife officers, and they estimate currently less than 30 alligators remain on all 6 lakes.
Oh my God.
So not very many. I told my wife that. She said I'm still not swimming in the lake. But if you look to your right, that's the only one I can promise you today. He squirts water on Saturdays. Good population of otters as well. Now the name of this canal is called the Fern Canal, and if you look up, you'll see one of those ferns. It's called resurrection fern. It only grows on oak trees. It will not grow on any other type of tree, and normally it's rather brown and dormant. But when it rains, it'll turn bright green almost overnight. And that's why it's earned the name resurrection fern. But back under the bridge, so please be careful.
Bend our heads.
Watch your heads, please. Resurrection fern, also the Spanish moss. That's the largest and the oldest oak tree in Winter Park. Take a good look at just how big that tree is as we go by. It's another great example of why these canals were originally created in order to float that type of large wood over to where the sawmill was originally built. So I showed you the pine. On the left is the oak. The other type of very popular wood was cypress. And if you're not familiar with cypress trees, they're protected. You can no longer cut down a cypress tree. But it's not just the tree that's protected, they have a very unique root system as well. As we come out of this canal, these are cypress trees. And once we go by, once you look up, come back down to the shoreline, and you'll see the roots that I'm talking about. Those are the cypress tree's roots. They're called cypress knees, and they're protected. That's where the tree gets their nutrients. It doesn't matter how pretty your beach is, if that shows up, you're not permitted to remove it. In fact, if you do, you're going to get a letter from the state, and it won't be friendly. Probably have some zeros attached to it. Now, as we go around the corner, we're going to be approaching Lake Maitland. By far the largest lake, 500 acres that are over there. That belongs to Rollins, and this is for the rowing team. They're out here very early. They start around 4:30 a.m. and they go 5 days a week. Welcome to Lake Maitland. That canopy, in my opinion, that's one of Winter Park's best kept secrets. That's a public park, and it's called Craft Azalea Garden. It's a 7-acre park, and it's located off of Alabama Drive. Now, if you're interested in moving on the lake, there's one available for you. They just put that for sale sign up there. $16 million is the price on that home.
Oh,
that is the home of the late Harvey Massey from Massey Pest Control, Massey Services.
$16 million.
Now, I mentioned Hurricane Ian came through last year. We were closed. Another remaining example of a high water mark is if you take a good look at the first boathouse, the first one that we're going to go by. About 14 inches up, you'll see a stain line that runs parallel. That's how high the water was on this lake for almost a month. So if you imagine the water at that level, all this was underwater. Water was all the way up to the building.
This feels so therapeutic, just being on water and given the history of this place, definitely worth the money. $16, double thumbs up.
Alrighty, I'm all by myself. Yes, sir. Please watch your head as we go underneath the Palmer Bridge. Alrighty, we're back on Lake Osceola where we started. I'm going to introduce to you some wonderful history on Rollins College, most famous graduate. He was a music major and he transferred. He went to Dartmouth in 1947, but in the summer of 1948 he transferred to Rollins College. He arrived at the dormitories and they were expecting him. Well, when he arrived prepared, and he brought an instrument with him, and the instrument he played was a grand piano. Well, they told him he was welcome in the dorms. The piano was not. He had 3 more years of school. He called his parents. They quickly arrived in Winter Park, I'm told within a week. And just coming into your view, you're going to see a beautiful home, A-frame, white trim, covered in the vine and the ivy. 3 weeks later, they moved into that home. 3 years later, he graduated. That's the home of Mr. Fred Rogers from Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
Wow.
And if you do get on campus, the chapel that I showed you last year just unveiled a brand new dedication in front of the chapel in honor of Fred Rogers. Your right-hand side, you'll see the home with the gray color white chimney, white trim. That's where the Capon House was, originally built in 1885. In 2010, those folks bought the property. They wanted to build the home that you see there. But before they could build it, they had to relocate the historical home. So it's from there, they rolled it down the hill 2 sections and floated it from there over to the museum's property. Cross up here on your right, that belongs to the First Methodist Church at Winter Park. The church is actually located at the top of the hill, but they own this little piece of property by the lake, and they've had their Easter sunrise services down there for 80 years. Well, folks, we're going to make our return.
This was an amazing tour which I thoroughly enjoyed, seeing all the breathtaking view and beautiful houses, $1 million houses. Wow, the chains of lakes and canals was so interesting. I highly recommend this place. Our captain was amazing and so knowledgeable. It was a great history to discover, an experience of a lifetime.